The founder of the Mongol Empire built the largest territory in history on milk, but his army was lactose intolerant. That 12th century conqueror led an army of hundreds of thousands of nomadic warriors across the Asian continent. Military historians usually credit advanced archery and brutal cavalry tactics for their massive global expansion. Those historians completely miss the hidden biological food science that kept those massive armies constantly moving. A massive military force requires thousands of tons of daily calories to survive long rides across barren steppes. European armies during the 13th century relied entirely on massive wooden wagons filled with heavy raw grain. God's bloody mercy. Move! Move, you wretched thing! The Asian nomads completely eliminated those vulnerable agricultural supply lines by eating exactly what they rode. During the brutal summer months, those roaming warriors sourced up to 50% of their daily calories from dairy. Relying on raw milk in the scorching summer heat introduces a massive biological problem for human digestive systems. A recent study, led by a prominent university in Cambridge, Massachusetts, looked deeply at the genetics of these nomads. They partnered with a leading research institute in Germany to extract ancient bone DNA from ancient burial mounds. The genetic results uncovered a physiological impossibility that contradicts every historical account of their diet. Around 90–15% of the modern and ancient nomadic population lacks the genetic mutation to process lactose. They entirely lack the lactase persistence gene that most Europeans developed to comfortably drink fresh cow milk. Consuming huge amounts of dairy without that specific genetic trait causes severe physical dehydration and pain. A dehydrated cavalry soldier physically cannot ride a heavy horse for 14 hours straight into intense combat. It seems completely illogical that the most successful mobile military force in human history relied on toxic fuel. You might think they just suffered through the immense physical pain to avoid starvation on the desolate Asian steppe. Researchers realized these brilliant warriors found a way to consume millions of gallons of milk without getting sick. They somehow bypassed their own human genetics completely to unlock the immense nutritional power of dairy products. The solution to this massive physiological mystery was not found inside the human body, but rather inside their tents. Those circular felt tents provided the exact microclimate needed to cultivate an entirely different living organism. A microscopic world thrived within the thick woolen walls, protecting the nomads from the brutal atmospheric elements. The warriors actively harvested this invisible biological power to completely preform the human digestion process. They understood cellular science centuries before microscopes ever existed in modern European science laboratories. This invisible alliance formed the absolute foundation of the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. How did an army of hundreds of thousands digest the exact milk that powered their conquests without getting sick? Instead of waiting thousands of years for a genetic mutation, they decided to outsource their own physical evolution. They gathered a complex ecosystem of microscopic bacteria and kept it constantly alive inside their wooden milk barrels. This ancient microbiome was carefully maintained and passed down through generations for over 3,000 long years. Whenever a family moved their camp, they brought these vital bacterial cultures along with them, inside tiny leather bags. Those specific microbes performed a brilliant chemical reaction before the fresh milk ever touched a hungry human mouth. The fermentation process rapidly consumed all the problematic lactose sugars naturally found inside the fresh raw milk. Microbes converted those indigestible dairy sugars into a safe and highly digestible liquid called simple lactic acid. Drinking lactic acid delivers pure energy without triggering any negative stomach cramps or severe physical illness. Nomadic armies essentially carried an external stomach that completely digested their main source of daily nutrition. The bacteria did all the heavy lifting, allowing the lactose-intolerant warriors to absorb massive amounts of calcium. A diet rich in pure calcium built incredibly dense bones that rarely fractured during violent physical sword combat. The fermented liquid also completely preserved the milk from spoiling during the scorching hot summer riding months. Raw dairy left out in the open sun goes rancid and toxic within a few short hours without modern refrigeration units. The high acidity of the fermented mixture created a hostile environment that killed off dangerous ambient pathogens. Every wooden barrel inside the camp became a heavily sterilized nutritional vault that guaranteed daily caloric safety. These families effectively weaponized microbiology to conquer the endless geographical boundaries of the open continent. Modern scientists are absolutely shocked by the extreme microbial biodiversity found living inside those ancient vats. Each nomadic family possesses a slightly different bacterial strain based on their specific ancestral riding trails. It represents a living continuous liquid bloodline that predates the famous 12th century conqueror by a millennium. Living bacteria became just as crucial to the survival of the massive empire as the sharp iron arrows in their bows. Without that specific microbial breakdown, the entire nomadic war machine would have collapsed from severe dehydration. An entire continent fell to an army fueled by millions of microscopic bugs swimming inside warm wooden liquid barrels. This brilliant biological workaround successfully completely closed the gap in their natural evolutionary development. It proves that true military supremacy often relies entirely on invisible logistics rather than brute physical force. The dairy solution provided the perfect liquid foundation, but men cannot fight endless global wars on liquids alone. They desperately needed an incredibly dense source of heavy solid protein to repair severely damaged human muscle mass. A warrior swinging heavy weapons requires massive amounts of digestible meat to maintain high physical bodily strength. Transporting fresh meat across a scorching hot desert guarantees rapid rotting and deadly food poisoning infections. With the dairy mystery solved, we must look at how they secured solid food for a massive marching nomadic cavalry unit. What other food technologies did they engineer to feed a cavalry without relying on the slow grain carts of the West? Traditional infantries relied on slow grain carts that made traversing rough mountain terrain completely impossible.
Move them! Push!
Soldiers cannot drag heavy wagons filled with wheat across slippery riverbanks or deep snowy valleys during the winter. Nomadic warriors completely reinvented military logistics by inventing the very first natural freeze-dried meat rations. They called this concentrated survival food Borts, and it completely changed the entire dynamic of medieval land warfare. Preparing this ration required utilizing the brutal sub-zero weather conditions found across the vast, open, cold steppe. During the dead of winter, families slaughtered a full-grown cow or a large camel for upcoming military combat missions. They sliced the raw meat into long, thin strips and hung them directly into the freezing cold northern winter wind gusts. Freezing temperatures and dry air sucked every drop of moisture directly out from the fresh, raw animal flesh. This natural process reduced the physical weight of the heavy beef by up to a staggering 80 total %. After the meat became completely dry and brittle, they ground the strips down into a very fine brown, dusty protein powder. This volume reduction allowed them to easily pack an entire processed cow into a small animal skin leather bag. They specifically chose to store this massive amount of powdered meat inside a dried bag the size of a sheep's stomach. A single warrior could effortlessly carry enough concentrated food to survive for several weeks on the open battlefield. This lightweight pulverized meat powder essentially functioned as the very first dense whey protein isolate supplement. The dried Borts offered an absolutely staggering 3,600 calories per kilogram of pure packed weight. Nutritional density sometimes reached 4,000 total calories, with nearly 80% pure digestible protein. This massive caloric surplus fueled the extreme metabolic demands of riding a heavy horse in sub-zero temperatures. Whenever a hungry soldier needed a meal, he never had to build a massive cooking fire or set up a complex outdoor camp. He simply tossed a small handful of the dried meat dust directly into a wooden bowl of boiling water or fermented milk. As hot liquid soaked into the dry cellular structure of the beef, it swelled up to 2.5 times its original size. Within a few seconds, that tiny pinch of brown powder transformed into a thick and rich stew right on the riding saddle. This genius culinary innovation removed the need for agricultural wagons, completely altering military combat strategies. Enemies remained completely trapped near vulnerable supply lines, while nomadic riders attacked from random directions. An enemy general could never starve the nomadic cavalry out using a traditional defensive castle siege tactic. The riders could easily wait outside the stone castle walls for several months while eating their powdered beef rations. The combination of pre-digested liquid dairy and ultra-lightweight dried beef created an unstoppable human war machine. Every single soldier essentially operated as a completely independent and fully self-sustaining moving military unit. Arg, arg, I will not yield. Arg. This weight puts, it is too much. The Asian warriors severed that heavy geographical anchor, completely unlocking unprecedented global military mobility. They essentially condensed an entire commercial slaughterhouse down into a lightweight pouch tied loosely to a saddle. Modern armies spend billions of dollars trying to replicate the exact nutritional density of that ancient dried Borts. We call highly engineered modern combat rations meals ready to eat, but the core scientific concept is truly ancient. The warriors perfected the science of food preservation centuries before the modern invention of plastic storage bags. With solid food secured in lightweight pouches, the riders faced another very serious biological combat problem. How did active soldiers survive months in the saddle without access to clean drinking water or fresh, sweet fruit? Finding a totally safe source of clean drinking water in the middle of a massive arid desert is practically impossible. Drinking directly from a stagnant, muddy puddle on the trail guarantees severe dysentery and a very painful, rapid death. To solve this, the nomadic warriors simply brought an entirely self-replenishing mobile beverage factory right with them. Every single cavalry soldier traveled across the brutal landscape with a dedicated herd of 4 to 5 strong horses. Those extra horses provided fresh legs for rapid travel, but the pregnant female mares provided something much more rare. Warriors heavily relied on the continuous milk production of those tough female mares to survive extremely long journeys. Raw equine milk contains significantly more aggressive lactose sugars than the milk produced by a standard dairy cow. Drinking pure mare milk without preparation triggers a violent laxative effect that rapidly dehydrates a strong human. They deployed genius microbial technology to ferment the dangerous raw horse milk into a completely safe cloudy beverage. This highly prized effervescent fermented drink became famously known across the entire vast continent as sour arag. The bacterial fermentation neutralized the dangerous laxative effect while generating essential complex daily vitamins. Since they traveled completely without fresh fruits or green vegetables, they lacked a daily source of vital vitamin C. Sailors crossing the ocean famously lost their teeth to terrible scurvy due to severe bodily vitamin C deficiencies. The fermented irag naturally produced enough pure vitamin C to entirely prevent scurvy from destroying the active army. The thick milky beverage also provided an incredibly rich source of deep hydration during the blistering hot summer days. It replaced precious electrolytes lost through intense sweating while riding heavy animals under the punishing bright sun. The specific yeast used in the long fermentation process introduced a mild alcohol content of exactly 2 total %. That subtle dose of alcohol served as an incredibly effective psychological tool for managing extreme battlefield trauma. Together we stand.
Together we rise.
For the horde.
For victory.
We raise our cups.
To the night.
A slightly buzzed soldier feels much less pain from minor cuts and remains incredibly calm during heavy combat stress. Their primary mode of physical transportation magically transformed into a rolling organic hospital and active pharmacy. No other military force in human history has ever managed to completely fuse their transportation and hydration into one. This closed biological loop rendered the moving nomadic army invincible against traditional military defensive tactics. You simply cannot poison an invading army's water supply if they solely drink pure, safe milk from their own fast horses. You cannot burn their grain fields because they carry their frozen, dense protein directly attached to their heavy belts. They detached themselves from the physical earth and became a terrifying, independent force of pure, moving global nature. The combination of complex bacterial science and meat dehydration created the absolutely perfect mobile human war machine. If they had the perfect self-sustaining food system, we must ask why they actually ever left their freezing home borders. Historians assumed the harsh desert climate forced the hungry nomadic tribes to violently seek out new physical resources. Popular narratives claim devastating droughts starved their ancient herds and triggered a violent, rapid global expansion. Arg. Hunger. Kill. Must find food. Charge. A groundbreaking scientific study tested this old starvation theory using incredibly ancient Siberian tree samples. Researchers analyzed hidden growth rings inside preserved Siberian trees that were over 1,100 years old. Dendrochronology allows experts to read historical weather patterns locked directly inside the ancient hard wooden timber. Wide rings indicate years of massive heavy rainfall, while narrow rings document seasons of terrible, deadly, harsh drought. When scientists checked the exact decades matching the rise of the empire, they found something absolutely very shocking. The famous conqueror did not unite the scattered nomadic tribes during a terrible period of bitter, desperate starvation. The exact opposite was true, based on the indisputable physical evidence permanently locked inside the hard wooden trunks. The early 13th century experienced an unprecedented 15 solid years of continuous heavy rain and deep moisture. It was the absolutely wettest recorded climate period in the region over the last 1,000 consecutive years. That continuous influx of heavy rain completely transformed the dry, arid desert into an endless, vibrant green oasis. The barren brown steppes exploded with an infinite supply of incredibly tall grass, stretching across the vast horizon. Infinite grass meant the nomadic tribes could suddenly breed and feed absolutely massive, unconstrained livestock herds. The empire was not born from desperate starvation, but rather from an explosive period of massive ecological abundance. The unprecedented weather anomaly perfectly activated their brilliant bacterial and meat dehydration food technologies. Millions of extra horses provided an infinite marching supply of fresh, raw milk for their ancient active microbiomes. Millions of extra fat cows provided an endless abundance of heavy raw beef to freeze dry in the freezing winter wind. The weather handed the ambitious conqueror the exact unlimited biological fuel he needed to completely rule the globe. The science of dairy fermentation and advanced meat dehydration allowed these nomads to expand without any slow farms. They converted their environment into a perfectly self-contained, high-energy, rolling biological military supply chain. By outsourcing digestion to bacteria and freeze-drying beef, they sustained a massive empire entirely on the move. If you made it this far, you understand more about this hidden history than most people will in their entire lifetime. Hit subscribe right now because the next incredible food history story we uncover will take you deeper into the past.